23rd, 2026, 9 a.m. Cape Coral Commission Chambers. Our pledge of public conduct. We may disagree, but we will be respectful of one another. We will direct all comments to the issues. We will avoid personal attacks, and speaking without being recognized will be considered as out of order. And you can start with the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. And roll call, please.
Mayor Chaffee.
Present.
Vice Mayor Stagionacci. Here. Commissioner Baird.
Here.
Commissioner Cole.
Here.
Commissioner Collins.
Here.
Thank you very much. With that, this is a special meeting. We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second. A motion on the floor and a second to adopt the agenda as presented. No further discussion. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No opposition. Motion passed unanimously. We have general public comment on anything that's not on the agenda. Anybody in the audience have anything? Seeing none, I will close general public comment. First order of business is the discussion on the PERC petition. Mr. Eschenfelder. Let's this out.
Mayor and Commissioners, so that the first item on the agenda is that there have been sufficient number of interest cards when a group of public employees want to examine or the opportunity to vote to create a union. The first step is that they sign interest cards, and those have been signed and submitted to the Florida Public Employee Relations Commission. And so the next step in the process is that the Public Employee Relations Commission has entered an order on that petition asking the city or requiring the city to respond within a certain period of time as to whether it believes that the proposed bargaining unit is an appropriate bargaining unit. And so I just want to make clear to everybody that this is not like a union is formed. What it is the PERC wants to make sure, are the people who are going to be voting the right people to belong in the bargaining unit? There's a concept that PERC examines called unity of interest. You don't want to have groups of employees in the same union who have a disunity of interest with each other. One of the big factors the city's position is with respect to is it okay for a sergeant to be in the same bargaining unit as officers? I've been doing labor and employment law since 1994, and when I started at 10 years old. And you know, there are, across Florida, there are a lot of bargaining units that are officers and sergeants. You know, it's not an uncommon thing. Sergeants are supervisory, and so there's not a complete unity of interest, but usually PERC will find that there's more interest than there is disinterest. I just worked with a town up in Pinellas that had kind of the same question, and PERC allowed the officers and the sergeants to be in the same bargaining unit. So, you know, my advice to you there is that the city not really expend any resources to fight that proposed unit. That, in other words, that my response to PERC would be that we have no objection to the officers and the sergeants being in the same unit. I did speak with the chief about it, since it's his force, and he's in agreement. He understands and acknowledges that that's the case. So if that is the direction that the commission provides on issue number 1 on your agenda, then that's what I would go ahead and respond to PERC, that on behalf of the city, that bargaining unit is fine. Once PERC, like I said, solidifies that, then PERC will schedule an election for the members of the bargaining unit, and or the purported members of the bargaining unit, because there is no bargaining unit yet. And then those members would vote by secret ballot, and because I believe right now there are 8 people eligible to vote. If 5 people vote yes, then a union would be formed, would be recognized by PERC. And from that point forward, the city would be obligated to bargain in good faith with the union on a union contract. So that's how that process is. So we're not to any of that yet. All today is talking about is just, is it okay with you all that I say officers and sergeants are okay to be in the proposed bargaining unit? That's really a yes or no issue.
Commission, any questions?
No.
Do you need a motion or just a consensus?
Just consensus that that's okay with you.
Everybody's okay with that?
Yep.
Say aye, aye?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. I think you have your consensus.
So then the second issue on the agenda is doing an agreement with the Manatee County Sheriff's Office for the provision of law enforcement services. And you all are familiar with the correspondence that was received by the union lawyer asserting that this is nothing more than anti-union hostility and so forth. But you know, as you all know, and as I stated in my response, the city completely recognizes and respects that folks are entitled to seek to create and be members of a public sector union. But you all have separate fiduciary duty to the taxpayers and to your own budget to make sure that you're always doing the right thing. And so this is, you're coming into your budget development year for the new fiscal year. And this is the first budget development year since the finalization of the OPAGA report. You have a police chief who I think has made it known, you know, I don't know if it's widely known, but he's made it known to many of you, I think, that his intention is to retire, and he has interest in being the public works director for the city, and so there's going to be a transition there in the police department. And sort of in terms of the timing of having this discussion, and in fairness to those members of our current police department who are looking at their careers and so forth, and what they may want to do, it's also logical for us to have the discussion now. Whether they choose former union or not, we don't care. If they do, we'll bargain a contract. But I think, as you all look to the future, it seems to be an opportune time to explore that for all those reasons. And so I have had preliminary discussions with the sheriff's office with respect to a transition. Obviously, the sheriff's position is, look, I'm not out to avariceously acquire, any more territory, but if this commission makes the decision to make that transition, I, of course, as the constitutional officer, will, assume my role. And so I have worked with the general counsel's office over the past few days on what would the transition look like. We've provided data on what our current budgets are, current expenses, our assets and resources. And yesterday, I was informed by the sheriff's office that their preliminary review of what our needs and staffing needs are is that they would be able to perform that role for $1.5 million and likely less is what was indicated by the general counsel's office, and that is based upon 8 deputies and 1 sergeant. So when you look at your current budget of $2,128,000 for municipal policing, that's a savings to the city of $628,000 a year. So that's really, it's a largely financial discussion. Obviously, you can't find a municipality in the United States of America that doesn't say we love our police department, so there's that emotional community component. That's for you 5 elected officials to have to discuss amongst yourselves, but just from the raw numbers, you would have well over $500,000 a year in extra budget. So with that, Mayor, I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Okay, do you have any questions for Rob at this point? Seeing that, do you need a motion on the floor?
Mayor?
I'm sorry, Chief.
Did the sheriff indicate when he would like to start this if it's approved?
So I did have that discussion with the sheriff. The sheriff is obviously open and flexible to the needs of the city. His view was that it sort of makes most sense to have it begin at the beginning of the fiscal year, so that would be October 1st. One of the issues that might come to pass is that if the city does enter an agreement, and again, we would have to go back. I told the sheriff that I was going to talk about this today, and if you gave direction to formalize an agreement and bring that back to you guys for review and approval or not, that we would talk about the timing of it. But if, for instance, the city does approve an agreement, and as a result of that, a too significant number of our officers go find other jobs, for instance, which could occur. They may say, okay, well, I know you're shutting down this police department, and so for my law enforcement career, I'm gonna go look to work here, or look to work there. It may become unviable to maintain the police department over the summer months. Obviously, the sheriff will be accommodating and begin early, but assuming that doesn't happen, the sheriff was thinking getting everything squared away in an orderly manner, asset transfers and all that kind of thing. They have folks that are in the academy that are going to be coming through because they're staffed at the level of their staff, and so they need to add staff to accommodate us. That may, of course, include hiring some of our folks if our folks choose to apply there and get hired. But be that as it may, that was the date that was put forward, if that answers your question.
So we can continue status quo unless we run into that situation where there's a mass exodus. I have one other question. As far as the budget that he's proposing right now, that includes our asset turnover. So what's year two's budget gonna look like when we don't have any more assets to turn over?
Well, I believe that is the sheriff's number, not including any unusual asset resources. So, and I think that the sheriff is handling one of your sister cities for roughly that same number. But again, I think whether the number is 1.5 million or 1.6 million, you're still looking at a substantial savings. And so what we would do is, if you want to proceed in that direction, is you would give the chief and I direction to go and continue to negotiate with the sheriff on an actual agreement where you would see all of these things laid out. What is the asset transfer going to be? What is the numbers going to be for year one, year two, and so forth? And obviously someone from the sheriff, if not the sheriff himself, would show up to that meeting when the contract is going to be voted on by you all to speak to any questions that you may have. So at this point, the issue before you really is one of, do we not want to talk about this any further and we're going to keep our police department. If they choose to unionize, we're going to negotiate a union contract with them. We're fine with spending over $2 million. Or do we want to direct staff to go and negotiate an agreement with the sheriff and bring that back for us to consider? That's really your two issues.
Commission? Chief, you have anything else to add?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Cole.
So I have a question. We're basically just looking and seeing what the numbers are, and then what services they're going to perform for us, and how much it's going to cost us, and how much we're going to save the taxpayers, basically. And will we get the same service? And we've discussed the police department over the years. I know it's happened. I've been here 40 years, and we've had this conversation several times. So I don't see a problem with, we're just looking into seeing what they offer, correct, at this point?
They will develop an actual formal contract.
And it will
come back to you all
and it will give time for the public to weigh in and say what they think. as we go through a couple more meetings.
Yeah, I mean, the public is always, that's what we have comment period for, and our
And
residents can come up.
when they do this, like, will they use the same officers like they do in Anna Maria?
There would be dedicated officers to the city, yes. That's what the general counsel's office indicated, is that they would have to add deputies, and those deputies would be dedicated to Bradenton Beach.
That's, I just wanna, I think us as commissioners, we need to look at every, avenue we can, especially nowadays with the cost of, what it costs in taxpayers, for the taxpayers to have a good service, and that's the most important thing. Policing is the most important thing, in my opinion, that makes this place so desirable to come to, and the character of our town. So, I'm good with looking into it.
I agree. I think we have a fiduciary responsibility. We are sworn our oath, health, safety, and well-being of our community. And the police department is the key to that. The special session that's coming up in Tallahassee, Lord only knows what the cuts they're gonna come up with and how. It looks like they're pretty serious about the taxes, property taxes, and the funds that we would be receiving. We need to be prepared for that, to make a well-informed decision when that time comes. So I believe, I think we need to continue with the negotiation to come up with a proposal from the sheriff's department. Anybody else? Rob?
Is the sheriff's department also a union organization? They're non-union. They didn't quote us a price in the proposal. I read through it on as needed by the hour. Like if some special venue comes up and we need officers by the hour, extra officers, how do we pay for that?
Well, so again, this is their initial assessment based upon what our budget it has been, and the staffing that we have. So in the typical sheriff interlocal agreement, like Anna Maria's, there is here's your base service, and then if you have a special event, for instance, and you desire additional officers, there just would be an hourly fee for those additional
They
deputies.
will provide that hourly fee?
Of course, yeah.
Where are they gonna be stationed? Down at the facility down
No.
at the beach? Or
No,
do we
they-
have to provide them a room?
We do not provide, would not be required to provide a room, and they have no interest or desire in taking over the current physical location. I have spoken to some city staff who indicates that part of the city's longer term planning is the city's running out of space here in City Hall, and so reprogramming that space for other operations that the city needs is something you guys could take advantage of if you make this move.
Are these officers that feel at home here in Bradenton Beach allowed to jump on their boat, the sheriff's boat?
So we, the sheriff will take any application from any of the officers that currently work for us, but we don't dictate who the sheriff hires, so.
Correct, but they are allowed,
Sure,
if
they would
they
have-
want to.
They would have the opportunity
Okay.
to join the sheriff's office, yeah.
So I have a special attachment to the police department. As Mayor knows, my brother spent over 30 years on the department, retired as the chief. You know, I love our guys. I love our police department. It's part of our down home feel, right? But we really are at a crossroads here financially. The storm, we have Opaga who wants us to start thinking about consolidating services. We have a lot of issues financially ahead of us that are putting a great strain on the city. I think it's our duty as commissioners to at least look for that proposal from the sheriff and see what comes back with that. It is unfortunate that we find our place ourselves here, right? Because we do love our guys. It's a good group. But again, financially, we're in a very, very difficult place. We're in a perfect spot with our budget coming up to make those decisions. The one question I have, Rob, is do we still negotiate with PERC until this proposal, because it is just a proposal from the sheriff, right? It comes back and then we vote on that proposal. So are we deciding today, or are we just getting a feeler
The
out?
direction, well, it's not a feeler, you already gave a feeler.
Oh,
And the
okay.
response the sheriff
Sorry.
gave is, and our rough estimate is 1.5.
Okay,
So the feeler has been.
Done.
You know, that's already in the water, and
Okay.
we're now starting to reel. So your direction today, if you wanna give it, as I told the mayor, it's two directions. Either we're not gonna discuss this any further, we're just gonna keep a police department, and we'll see what happens with the union vote. And if the union vote occurs, then we'll negotiate a contract. That's that way. And again, whether they unionize or not is kind of irrelevant to, are you going to make the move to the sheriff? Making the move to the sheriff, because understand, the $2.128 million, which is your current budget without a union contract, you know, so unionization isn't really the issue here. The issue is maintaining a local police department has its costs. There are certain costs that, because it's a small agency, you don't have economies of scale, you know, we pay our own insurance premiums, our own workers' compensation, our own vehicles, our own vehicle maintenance. All that would be handled in a much more efficient way with a larger agency. I mean, that's just the facts of life. And so what would, you know, if you want to move forward with getting the formal proposed interlocal agreement with the sheriff, your direction to me would be go back to the sheriff and get that, get all of the P's and Q's, the hourly rate, as the commissioner indicated, and bring all that back, and then you guys would have that on an agenda. Residents could come and speak, you know, yes or no, and you would make a business decision, you know, whether you feel you want to do it or not. Did that answer your question?
yes.
Commissioner.
So, Rob, I have a question about the union process. To make a business decision, we need to know what we'd be facing in terms of, right now it's at 2.128 million. How would we,
You can't
compare.
You can't. You're going to make your decision on going to the sheriff based upon the costs as you now know them. You can speculate on what the police department would cost in the future, whether it's unionized or not, right? Because the chief was telling me earlier today that even without union talk, that he had been discussing what their raise would be.
Right.
You know, and so you'd have an increase, and I think he was talking about $5,000. And so you'd have a cost increase anyway. And it's up to understand for everybody listening, including if our officers are listening, you know, that the law in terms of public unions is that if a union is formed, the public employer is required to bargain in good faith on all terms and conditions of employment, which would include, of course, wages and benefits. The law does not require a public employer to give more money to public employees just because they're unionized. So we could collectively bargain with a formed union, and there would be no raises whatsoever. And in the arc of my career, I've done a lot of union negotiating, including for Manatee County with the EMS, and there have been instances where no raise was agreed to. And a union cannot force a governing board, a county commission or a city commission to spend money that it doesn't want to spend. Our obligation would just be to negotiate in good faith. So they would present why they feel they're not being paid enough, or why their benefits are not good, or whatever. We would consider that, we would do our own research, we would come back and discuss, but if we could not agree, then we could not agree. And if we do not agree, then their wages as they are now would continue to be their wages. And so I wouldn't, it's not we don't wanna hold it over the officers' heads of, well, we're gonna do sheriff, unless you tell us you're not. These are two separate issues and they need to be kept.
No,
So I understand what you're saying, is that in my head, I'm assuming that there might be more costs, if it goes in that direction. But that's too speculative. What we know is what our current number is, which is $2.128 million. And we know at least what the sheriff has preliminarily said, which is 1.5, which will come back in a formal contract proposal. And then you guys would make your business decision based upon all available facts, which could include understanding that the officers, whether they unionize or not, may come back and want more money to continue to work.
So I just have a couple of comments. One, we also have to take into consideration that this contract will not include CRA patrol. That will be off the table. So we would have to figure out how to do that. The way the sheriff's office system is set up at this point is you would have to make a request for off-duty deputies, and we continue to pay them for CRA, but there's no guarantee that anybody's gonna sign up for it. The way the sheriff's office operates, their deputies get, I think, at least one or every other weekend off. And I think that there might be a little hard pressed to get a deputy that now has a weekend off to want to come out and work. Some may have to, but there's a lot of off-duty offered to the deputies throughout the county. And I believe the largest would probably be the tax collector's office, because they have a deputy at every location. And then other governmental agencies within the county that provide that service if it's requested. The other thing is that the mayor, myself, and Mayor Titsworth and Chief Tokager are getting ready to go to the county in June. We've made it clear to them that we need more money to provide the contractual agreement with them to patrol the beaches. I don't know what those numbers will look like until we sit down and talk. But preliminary, we were thinking around $100,000. So that would help offset some of the costs that we have. And of course, I can't say that because it's information that was shared that shouldn't have been shared. But anyhow, I feel confident, I think Shane does too, that we're probably gonna see a turnaround in our tax where we were down because of the hurricane, that our property values are coming back up and we're gonna start to see some relief. Is that your thought on that?
Probably not a complete rebound, but
Right.
at least not.
But it's a start. So we already know we can sustain what we have with what we got, and now that we know if we're gonna come into more, that is a possibility to take into consideration. If I need to stay on and do both positions still, I will do that if it saves money, and if we could consider maybe keeping the police department. I understand that it is strictly financial and it is a lot of money. And I know that the top two priorities, I would think law enforcement would be number one, but I know stormwater and undergrounding is something that is on the mind of our citizens. I'm just gonna throw that out there for consideration, and we can do what we wanna do. Obviously, if we're required to move forward, we will definitely negotiate with the sheriff in good faith.
So, to me, it boils down to, sometimes you pay more for something because you like it better, and it's more suitable for our situation. But I don't think there's, and we've had, like I say, over the years, we've had this conversation so many times, I've heard it, and we always ended up sticking with our own police department. The bottom line is, it's money. And it's amount of tax dollars that come from, this little area. And like I've said so many times before, I'd like to see more of our tax dollars that come from Bradenton Beach back into Bradenton Beach, rather than raising taxes, just to make sure that we get good service. Because your own police department, you know, that's one of the identities of the city, and it has been for years. So, you know, I'm torn about this because, the way I see it, it's about the money. And if we have the money, I think we could move forward and allow our officers good pay, you know? So we don't lose them to neighboring, and we've had that discussion so many times over the past year that, you know, we hire somebody on, we train them, and then they go somewhere where their budget's bigger. So it's all about the money, basically, and how we're gonna pay for whatever we end up doing. And I think we should keep all our options open at this point to see.
So if you're looking at cost comparison compared to the other agencies in Manatee County, we are between the two highest paid police departments, being Longboat Key and Holmes Beach. The sheriff's office is higher than all of them. We are more comparable to what the city of Bradenton and the city of Palmetto are paying their officers. So it's not that our officers are 100% underpaid, it's just that some of the comparison is to areas that have more money than we do. I want to read from this to make sure I don't screw this up. So the 2025 assessed tax value for the city of Bradenton Beach was $923 million. The assessed value for the city of Anna Maria was $2.4 billion. The assessed value for Holmes Beach is $3.2 billion, and just the Manatee County side of Longboat Key is $2.6 billion. We can't compete with that. That's just not possible. So then when you look in contrast, the city of Palmetto's property value is $1.6 billion. Anna Maria, Holmes Beach, and Longboat Key are way ahead of them. And Palmetto's a much larger city than these other cities as they stand. And then, I gotta find the city of Bradenton. I'm sorry, I didn't bring my glasses. The city of Bradenton is at 6.6 billion. And now you all know what the size of the city of Bradenton is. Holmes Beach is half. These numbers are very disproportionate to what is out there. So that's tough.
Is the lawyer able to give us a personal opinion or just professional as he sits here?
As my wife would confirm, I have personal opinions on a lot of things, but I'm not an elected official of the town of the city of Bradenton Beach, and so my personal opinion about what you guys should or shouldn't do is not really relevant. That's what the voters put you five up here to do, with respect.
If we have discussions with this union one time and go with it, can they shut us down at any time, like put their hands up in the air and say, well, we gotta talk again because something went wrong, and then we gotta sit down with them again?
Well, when you negotiate a union contract, one of the things you negotiate is the term of the contract. Under law, it can be no longer than 3 years. And so if you're in the middle of a term of a contract and a particular union says, well, we wish to reopen the contract early for this circumstance or that circumstance, we are obligated to sit down and hear what they have to say, but we're not obligated to do what they demand that we do. The key always with a public agency in dealing with a public union is that it negotiates in good faith. We would, well, we don't have a union, but an agency that does have a union would be in trouble if it just says, I just don't want to talk to you. But in terms of a union holding something over you or whatnot, it's really, whether an agency, a law enforcement agency is unionized or not, when it comes to wages, it's a fairly typical cycle. They will compare themselves to higher paid agencies. They will say to the public employer, because these agencies pay more, you need to pay us more, or we're gonna, you're gonna lose people to this other agency. They will fill the chambers with uniformed people and say, oh, we are your heroes and so forth. And they are, I don't mean to be disrespectful. Our first responders are like core to the nation's community, right? 9/11 and everything else, so no disrespect, but government agencies have many financial needs, obligations, and needs to plan, first responders being just one of many of them. And so it almost always comes down to a political, does the governing board want to be seen as not supporting, the police or the fire or the EMS or whatnot? So, and the employee side knows that, and so they play that. And obviously the employer is really just focused on what is our financial resources, what is our financial obligations, and Commissioner Cole's comments about, we've always discussed this and we've always decided just to keep a police department. That's y'all's decision, you're a municipality, you can do it or not do it. But in terms of an employee group, whether it's unionized or not, holding it over, under the Florida Constitution, public employees are not allowed to strike, so they cannot literally shut down the police department. If we're in the middle of negotiations and we just simply cannot agree, then it goes to impasse. And that's a whole separate statutory process, and there could be a hearing officer that gets involved, and then if that process doesn't reach an agreeable resolution, it comes to the governing board. And the governing board can impose its final will and say, you're gonna do this, that's what we decide. So I don't know if that answered your question or not.
So they can't go on strike?
They're not allowed legally to go on striking for it, yes.
I think it comes down to more than money in this case, and I think everybody's gonna agree with that in this city.
With that, I, just to say again, I do believe we have a fiduciary responsibility. We have a lot of things in play over the last several years, not the least, the hurricane damage, and the depletion of our resources. We have the special session again going on. We don't know what they're gonna be doing, but it looks like there's going to be cuts. We know our costs are always continually going up on a regular basis. We've had 5% increase in salaries annually, 3-5, mostly 5, and on one occasion I believe we had an 8% increase. Always trying to get our people, all of our people, up in pay to be competitive as best we can as such a small community that we are. Again, the OPAGA stuff, those were serious studies that went on that affect our community. And Tallahassee has shown on a regular basis, an annual basis, their willingness to hurt local communities or affect local communities in a bad way when it comes to support funds that we are eligible for. I think we should continue to at least negotiate, get the formal offer presentation from the Sheriff's Department, so that again, that we can make a well-informed decision on what we need to do as a community for the best of our community. Anybody else have any comments? I want, one second, he had his hand up, you've already, and then we'll come right back.
Well, I think what we need to do though, to fully understand it, and the chief brought it up, right now, we're paying, our budget for this year has an additional $134,000 for CRA policemen. I think we need to know what that would cost from the sheriff as well, because the folks on Bridge Street notice when there are police walking around. And if we don't provide that, or we don't know what that cost is, then I don't think we are doing our job to know what the true cost is, because that would be an additional cost. So I'd like to see that added into the quote from the sheriff, because I still think that level of policing on Bridge Street is needed and is important. So if we can get that.
And that would be part of the.
Exactly, that's what
I do exactly. Plus the beach patrol, you know.
Sure.
That the county's gonna have to cover that, and not the city of Bradenton Beach, because they already supplement ours with the interlocal agreement, which we worked hard to receive over the years, decades. I think your father, when he was mayor, that's when it started, so, yes.
I had that conversation with the sheriff about the beach, that he would need to reach out to the county to see what level of service they wanted to have there. Because if we disband the police department, then that contract would also go away.
Tens of thousands of people, which will affect the whole county with tourist development tax
Yes.
dollars. It's incredible how the effect. But it's in our community. 1/3 of our city is Manatee County Parks. Park.
So,
Money.
on your point, comparing comparing what we have to what we're gonna get.
Right.
That's how this decision's gotta be made, because, you know, if we're getting less and we're saving $500,000, well, are we really saving? Do we have the same protection? Meanwhile, while we figure out what we're gonna get and what we have, maybe there'll be some kind of way we can figure out how to come up with some more money to support our own police department and keep things going. Because I really would love to see us keep our police department, because it's the staple of our little community here. And always has been, since your brother, and even before that, the chiefs, and you really feel safe here. I mean, I do anyway, and I've lived here for over 4 years. And I would dearly miss our own police department. And I know a lot of other people would, but it's about the dollars and how things are going nowadays. We don't know what the future's gonna bring, but to do our due diligence, we have to look at every option we have. And in the meantime, try and figure out what we can do to keep what we got. You know, we got the same comparison. That's what my thoughts.
Commissioner Talbot.
I agree with Ralph 100%. Everything he's saying is coming right out of my head also. If these officers, did they all sign up to be part of the union, or did just some? And it leads to my next question. What happens if 3 of them wanna be in the union and 4 of them don't? We have to negotiate with the 3?
So, PERC would not have sent a requirement for us to respond if a majority of the potential bargaining unit members hadn't signed interest cards.
Okay.
So, we're not allowed to know who did or who didn't. All we know is that more of them did than didn't. Although it's my understanding that the gentleman who initiated this discussion amongst the officers has since left the force and gone to work for,
You poked the bee's nest and left, huh?
yeah.
Okay.
You went to work for Longboat?
Longboat, yeah. And, but be that as it may, the petition was filed, and so, if you just sort of do the math, if that majority signed interest cards, then more likely than not, a majority would then also vote to have a union. But that's speculation, we don't know. And so then, to get to your question of who do we bargain with, once PERC recognizes a bargaining unit that includes this group of employees and this group of employees, in this case, officers and sergeants, then whether you are an officer who voted yes or no, you're still in the bucket with the union.
Okay.
You cannot, no longer can the city negotiate with you individually about what your pay is or your terms and conditions. It all has to go through the union.
Okay.
And so if it comes to pass that a majority of officers then say, well, I don't like reunion for whatever reason, they'll have to initiate a decertification process to decertify their own union. That's up to them to do. But legally, once a union is formed, as a public employer, we're obligated to work only with the union on terms and conditions of employment. And that union represents all persons who hold the job titles that are in that
Whether they
organization,
signed up or not.
whether they signed up or not.
Okay.
So if someone's a non-union worker there and they're obligated to join that union?
No, they're obligated to be represented by the bargaining unit if they hold one of the positions. It is voluntary under Florida law for an employee to pay union dues. And usually how that goes down is that if you refuse as an officer or a maintenance worker, it doesn't have to be just police unions, if you refuse to pay union dues and don't become a member of a union, because being a member of a union is different than being represented by the union. And so if you refuse to be a member of a union, then the union will say, well, you know what, if anything happens to you, if you get disciplined or whatever, we're not providing you with any representation, we're not providing you with a lawyer. That's usually how the union tries to force people to pay dues.
And it's interesting, thank you.
Commission, if you have no further questions,
No, I just have one thing.
go ahead.
So in light of what Ralph said about trying to find more money to keep our police department, that kind of is taken out of our hands because everything, if we decide to keep the police department, is part of a negotiation process with a union. So even our budgeting process gets impacted because we don't even know what that negotiation looks like, what they're asking for, how much that will cost the city in the long run. So finding more money to keep them, really, we're kind of past that because now we have union negotiations to deal with rather than we can just say, hey, we have more money, we want to keep you, here's this is how we're gonna fix, do that. So we're in a very precarious spot right now because we already have this PERC letter and this interest from our police officers. So, going forward with budgets, what kind of equipment do we need to have for our police department to keep them moving forward in this century? All those things now are part of the negotiation process instead of just us making a decision to find more money to keep them. So we have to keep that in mind as well.
And that is also correct, and I should have mentioned that when the deputy arrives from work, he will be 100% outfitted to today's law enforcement standards, which our officers right now are not. We don't have body cams, we don't have cams in the car, we need to replace our radios. All this stuff is extremely expensive. And then most of the agencies are also accredited. Holmes Beach is going through it now. I've heard that they're almost up to around $75,000 just to get accreditation, and then you'll need an accreditation manager. For us, it would be part-time, sort of like the floodplain manager, Sandy. But that position's still gonna have to be filled, and these things, if we're gonna move forward and maintain a professional department with the proper rules and regulations, that the you know, the union, if it is unionized, are gonna expect us to do, then we would have to take the next step.
So, as he explained, us as the governing board, we're the ones who are responsible for, what we can pay. And you can only pay what you have. That's all that you can do. The only thing you can do, and this is why I say, this just goes through the taxpayers, you know, should be putting in their 2 cents, because, nothing says that if we don't have the money, we can't give a raise. That's just the way it is. And if you don't have the money, you can't buy a new car, and you have to make do with what you got. A lot of people in this world have to do that along the way today. So, really, we are the ones that are in control of the purse, because we're the governing body. And we will negotiate just like we would negotiate with anybody else, in all fairness. Because we don't want our police officers, we want them happy, we want them working, you know, we want them to be able to get by, we don't want them struggling. And I think there could be plenty of money available to do that. It's, you know, maybe we need some innovation and some thinking outside the box nowadays.
You can always raise your taxes.
Well, and that, you know, and that's one of the things that right now, it's a big deal, because, taxes, especially here, it's like a compounded investment, which just keeps going up and up until it's unsustainable.
Right now,
And that's just one of the things.
We're the highest millage
Yeah.
of all municipalities at 2.33.
Not of all municipalities, of the municipalities on the island.
On the island.
Yes.
On the island, yeah, excuse me.
And
I guess my point to my comment, and Vice Mayor sort of mentioned the same thing, is the legislature and Florida law has made it to where the revenue sources for a municipality are very limited. You've got your ad valorem property taxes, you've got whatever fees that you can collect, but more and more the legislature is saying, if you collect a fee, it must be directly tied to the specific expense, you know, the building department fee and so forth, and impact fees, if you have those, are only geared towards new development, which you don't really have a lot of new development, it's largely a built-out city here, and so, you know, apart from the property tax, there's not a lot of revenue to be had.
here's the thing, all the new building that's going on in Manatee County, the amount of money that's coming in, and you're gonna have to, you know, you're gonna have to subsidize, you're gonna need more police officers. The impact of all 4,500 homes going in on Cortez Road and all along Bar that have come up, they all come to the island. So Manatee County has to ask itself the question, how are we gonna police this fairly to, you know, the people? And I'm just saying that the tax dollars that come from Bradenton Beach, how much are we gonna need? How much would we need to raise the taxes, as you say, we'd have to raise the taxes? Would it be a millage point? What would it be? You know,
well,
I'm just asking the question right now.
With that being said, Commissioner Cole, we have had discussion in the past, it never got to that point with putting a referendum on the ballot for an increase, but specifically tied to the police department to see if the voters would be willing to do that. This also kind of refers to what Commissioner Tallum had stated during the library meeting. You know, if you want us to pay for it, then we need to figure out how much you really want us to pay. And this would definitely be the indicator, yes or no. I don't know if we'd have enough time to get something like that on the ballot this year. Probably not, probably would have to be next year. So, I mean, that is something that you might want to consider to do this. I will tell you that I've worked with some of these guys more than 20, 25 years. I will be shocked if they vote to continue down that path to unionize, based on the information that's
again,
being
we're
presented
not-
today.
we're
I'm sorry. Disregard that. Strike that from the record, please.
Well, the point I'm getting to point I'm getting to is, look, each millage point, and we have one of the highest millage points in the county, Bradenton Beach does. And I know this because I just went through all the property tax deal. So roughly, we're paying on $1 million piece of property, you're paying $15,000 a year plus a little bit more. And each time you raise a millage point, that comes to $1,500 more a year. So just like the special election from the, for West Manatee, it didn't pass. Because people are tired of, the people that live here and just live in their house don't have an income to support those high tax dollars that are coming. They might be living in a 1980s house. That's perfectly fine, but they keep raising their value because of the square footage, and it's out of control. It needs to be adjusted. Some way, somehow, you gotta come up with a fair tax value so that we can support our police, we can support our firemen, and that's what's gonna have to happen. Someone's gonna have to figure out how to do it without continually raising taxes. It's just not popular. And, that's all I got to say. What you'll do is you won't have any people living here. It'll all just be vacation rentals. It's headed in that direction. I mean, even in town. Why do people on the island pay 3 and 4 times the amount of somebody in town in taxes? We don't get any other services than the people in town get. And, we pay 6 millage points for education. We pay 6 millage points for Manatee County. And then the other 2.33, that comes from Bradenton Beach. We have no room to raise our millage. If we raised a millage point, we're hitting everybody that has $1 million home, which that's almost everybody in Bradenton Beach, for $1,500 more a year. That the people that live here. So it's, it just keeps going up and up. And like I said, I would like to see more of our tax dollars that we pay out, if we're gonna pay them, back into our little community. And how it could be done. So someone's gonna have to cut here and there, or, what's really necessary? Well, the police is necessary and fire is necessary. Schools are necessary. So, everybody that's an elected official needs to start putting those perspectives in line. And think about what we spend our money on.
Debbie made a point about negotiation going on right now, but we've already got our budget. So where does that leave us? I don't understand what the point was. I'm curious that we already got a certain amount of money set aside for the police, and now the budgets don't coincide with the date. Their budget should be the same date as ours. They should be attacking us on our renewal time, not after we've appropriated the money. Am I right or wrong? I don't know.
We haven't started the budget process for this year. If you're talking for the city, we'll probably start that in June.
But we've already got somebody wanting something right now. They want it.
Right, I agree.
So if a, excuse me, if a union contract were negotiated this spring, obviously the amount of money that's in the city's budget for policing through this fiscal year is what would be billed. It would be up to the union to say, well, but you could not spend that money on public works that you were going to. You could do a budget amendment, move it over here. That would all be negotiations, but again, that all would come back to this board, and you all would have the authority to say yes or no. So they could ask for what they want to ask for. It's up to you just to give it to them.
even though the actual, the budget discussions really get hot and heavy in a couple of months, as the chief has stated, the chief and I, we both have had meetings with the county. We're planning on meetings to take place so that we can have the numbers available for us when we get into the budget time. Everything's going to be presented to the commission and to the people of our community. So that's the reasoning that I have stated, and all of us, I think, have stated that we need to continue and get the formal proposal from the sheriff's department as part of that information, again, so that we can be well informed in our decision making when it comes to the budget, when it comes to the CRA budget, when it comes to our all of this stuff. All those numbers will come together at the end. We'll know what they are, and then our treasurer and the department heads.
And also the police union.
Absolutely. Well, that's up to the union. We just need the information for our purposes of what would happen if we would want to go with the sheriff. We need that number so we can compare, so that we'll also have information as to the increases that we need for in keeping our police department. What does another professional, the sheriff's department, his thoughts on our community after studying it? How many police officers do you really need? What type of equipment do you really need? The chief has already discussed the fact that not only do we not have the cameras in the cars and the cameras on the police officers, it's also time to start rotating some of the vehicles out every year. One of the other things that I always, and I think we all are cognizant of, we're going into hurricane season too, so we have to be prepared for all kinds of things bad things that could happen to our community, and we need to make sure that we have our police department that is well supplied with everything they need to do their jobs. At our public works department, we're constantly thinking of emergency operations in everything we do, and the PD is a major part of that, and of course it's the high-end item in our budget.
I understand everything you said except for the dates.
The dates.
When the union wants us to negotiate with them, is that for the future, like for next year, or is that like from the time we talk to them on? That's all.
So the contract would be from the date you all approve the contract through whatever term we.
So we could post-date it to match our budget.
I doubt very
Negotiation.
seriously that they would be willing to wait that long, but that would be the subject of negotiation talks.
Now, when we talk to these people, are we talking to the officer, in the officer's interest? I mean, could the officer say, hey, we'll wait till July, or are we talking to a union machine?
So the union decides who is at the table.
So the officers ain't got nothing to say
Well,
about this.
that's not our business. That's the way a union works. If a majority of officers say, we vote to hand our fate over to the union, then from that point forward, we can't stick our nose behind the curtain and say, well, who are you sending? Why isn't the officer here at the table? How do I know you're speaking in the officer's best interest? That is none of our business. Whoever shows up across the table from us, we are to presume is speaking on behalf and in the best interest of the officers. And if a majority of the officers feel, well, wait a minute, that you're not speaking in my interest, that's for them to decide and for them to complain to their union officers. We can't get involved in that.
I guess the sheriff's proposal's looking mighty wonderful at that point.
So the only thing I want to add to Ralph is, talking about taxes, is what we have to consider still, and which was mentioned briefly, is there's still a House bill out there to eliminate property taxes for homesteaded properties. Well, that will negatively impact our budget in a big way. The money that we would put forward to help fund our police department. So that's something that we have to keep in our brain too, because that hasn't been defeated. That's still in discussions, and everybody thinks that's gonna happen, and so we have to keep that in our mind also, because that will negatively impact our money that we get to fund things for this city.
One more nail in the coffin.
Mr. Cole?
Yeah, so I'm sure that as they thought this through, policing and fire and all this stuff was thought up too, so there may be other opportunities for money out there that you're not seeing.
Yeah, they haven't come up with a plan for how to fund police and fire. They're protecting school funding in the House bill, but there's no current protections for, fire and police.
Well, that's because school is separately stated on the tax bill, so it's easy to just draw a circle around it, but police and fire are usually woven into a county or a city, and so it's hard to quote-unquote protect it, because it's just a line item in the municipal budget.
Article this morning in, I believe it was the Sun Sentinel, interviewed House Representative Perez, who's the Speaker for the House, and then also Senate Majority Albright, and they don't, from what the article had stated, it doesn't look like there's gonna be much that would happen this year to put something out on the ballot, even though the governor is really pushing it. They cannot agree on anything unless something, really happens. Again, as the mayor said, Senator Albright feels that the fiduciary responsibility is to get a budget passed. They're way behind on that, so you can look that article up and read what their exact comments were.
If there are no further questions, I will open it up for public comment on this item only. Anybody in the audience like to come forward? You need to fill out a blue card. If you haven't filled out the blue card, you fill it out afterwards, but make sure you please fill it out. We need that card. You can come up. The cards are on the back of thing, so.
Push the button, state
make
your
sure
name
you-
for the record, and you have 3 minutes. The buzzer will go off, okay?
Sure.
We'll fill out a blue card and everything. Thank you.
Bill Clements, I am a resident here. Just a couple of thoughts based on the discussion. I guess first and foremost, it seems like from what a lot of the commissioners have asked, that right now, the dollars being spoken about for our police department and the sheriff's department aren't quite apples to apples, right? There's other things like the police beaching, or, the beach situation, so on and so forth. The chief has mentioned upgrades on equipment and stuff like that. Confirmation that those upgrades the sheriff's department already has in place. I guess the other thing that comes to mind is there a transfer of liabilities with regard to what the city is liable for with our own police department versus it being transferred over to the sheriff's department? The big thing that I wonder is, why is there a $600,000 swing? I understand that there's an economy of scale with the sheriff's department, something that size, but is there some things that they're not providing, or are there things that we could be doing here to maintain our police department at a closer cost situation? The final thing is, with all the questions I've heard from the commissioners, I'm unfortunately from the north, so I understand unions better than I care to. And I understand what the attorney has said. You can't speculate on what that cost is eventually going to be. However, a lot of points have been brought up. I think you can at least, you should, as a fiduciary, as you said, Mayor, consider that the union's not gonna save you money over what you got right now. I'll leave it at that, okay, without speculating. And do you have the same police department that we all fondly look at right now, once you get into a union situation? Finally, Negotiation with the union, yes, Commissioner Cole, you can say, no problem, this is all we got to spend, and in negotiation, we did it in good faith. Not how it works. It just, they have other avenues, no, they can't go on strike, they can't suspend services, but they know how to negotiate, that's why they're there, that's why they represent the bargaining units, a nice convenient way of saying, the individuals we know as the police officers that are, we see day to day here, they're more than bargaining unit, but enough said. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clemens.
Thank you.
Anybody, no,
Those cards are in
no,
the
no,
back.
not, this is just their comments. And then when we're done with public comment, then if the commission has, they wanna try to answer the questions, then we can do that. We don't get into a back and forth. Anybody else in the audience like to speak with regards to this subject and this subject only? Anybody? I will close public comment. Chief, he was asking about a Mr. Clemens was asking about a $600,000 swing. I would guess a big part of that is the sheriff's department they're huge. And it's the scale of
So
things.
if you look at your budget and what goes into the $2,128,000, there are a lot of unique expenditures that the city spends that the sheriff wouldn't need to, like your building, there's always a part of it that attributes to that, the vehicles, the liability insurance, in response to the citizens' question, yes, liability would transfer over to the sheriff, so we would no longer need to purchase liability insurance for police issues. That would be handled through the sheriff's office. And yes, the rate that we pay, we would be derivatively paying the sheriff's insurance, but it's at such a far more economical rate, because from the sheriff's office's standpoint, adding the 8 officers and 1 sergeant is so incrementally small that the sheriff's insurance policy almost doesn't care. I mean, that's such a small percentage of the whole force of the sheriff. So it's really, where is the swing coming from? It's because of the efficiencies that are taking place. And again, the sheriff can speak to that, when the agreement comes forward to you, all you can ask those questions.
Anybody have any comments with regard to public comment?
Can you ask the public a question?
Public comment is closed. It's back up on the dais for us to discuss. And if commission would vote to say we want to open up public comment again, then we could go through the process of public comment one more time. But we can't we don't get into a one-on-one back and forth argument. That was the old days, and we have problems. No, I understand. The old days when it was, yeah, that was something, and Joe knows, he was here. Commissioner.
So I kinda like what the,
Mr. Clement?
yeah, Mr. Clement said about apples to apples, right? We need to have an apples to apples comparison. The chief mentioned CRA, those kinds of things, I would imagine, I can't say for sure, but overtime is calculated in our budget amount for our officers when we negotiate our budget for the police department. What's that look like as far as the sheriff's department is concerned? Because we do have special events. We have a much bigger population during season, and the demand on our officers is greatly improved. So I think we need to know what that looks like as a whole, and not just 8 officers and a sergeant for their shifts, normal, nothing out of the ordinary. I think we need to find an apples to apples discussion for the proposal.
That discussion would also have to include derelict vessel program. I don't know that the sheriff would want to participate that. We would have to then send that down to code enforcement and have the sheriff's office Marine unit assist us with posting, but that task then would have to be added to the code enforcement officer.
Yeah, this is not black and white by any stretch of the imagination. There's a lot of variables involved, and we get a lot of special services from our guys in our police department, and that's something that's a concern. That loss is a concern.
Well, yeah, just you gotta take into consideration the policing of our CRA waterfront and our waterfront. Are they taking that into consideration? I know they got nice boats. I see them go by all the time. So, I mean, is that one thing that would be put into the mix?
If there's no further questions, I think that the patrolling of our waters within the city boundaries of Bradenton Beach and our obligation, anywhere from 500 feet out all around, we have policing authority, our laws, they have to abide by those laws all the way around. We went with that special act up in Tallahassee years ago to get that. So with that, if we have no further questions, are we ready for a motion? And I'll just propose a motion to approve, continuing with formal request from Sheriff Wells for operational analysis to provide an agreement for the city of Bradenton Beach for the sheriff to take over the policing law enforcement activities of the city of Bradenton Beach.
I guess I want to make sure in that statement,
Includes CRA,
it includes
includes
all of the issues that would.
So we'll go back to the sheriff, we'll raise these issues, we'll say, you know, what you come up with, please make sure that you articulate all of the city's specific unique needs, and that's what will be brought back to you.
As discussed.
And
As discussed, it would be the CRA, it would be the Marine, it would be the beach patrol, not just the beach patrol on the county beaches, but our police officers go up and down the beach, all the way up and down the beach. So, we want to make sure that that would be part of the agreement. 'Cause that's a big thing with the number of tourists that we have. I'm not sure how that's going to go over, but
The Anna Maria deputies do that.
they do.
Yes.
Great. We just want to make sure our shores on the Gulf and the Bay are covered.
yeah, I wanna make sure everything's covered, so we're comparing
Yes.
apples with apples, right?
As
The
close
same
as
as I
we
said
can.
before.
Yeah, yeah.
I just wanna make sure that, we're not getting less than what we got right now.
Absolutely. So we all understand what the motion is about and what will be negotiated, all good on that? And do we have that motion on the floor?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion on the floor and a second. No further discussion. All those in favor of the motion on the floor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No opposition, motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much. And with that, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
You from the press?
Yeah.
Okay, Samuel. Samuel, yes. Got
We
it.
sent them 2 days ago.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
thanks. You want the
Right
officers?
here.
Yes, I'm an ex-field agent. Can I have this? That's yours to keep. You're from the union? Yes. Here. I left my business cards outside. Let me just get these other guys to the press before they go. All right. I'll be here for a minute. Leslie, when he gets done with TV. He can do TV first.
Okay.